Kristy Sumner, who is a paranormal investigator. So my very first paranormal investigator. Welcome.
Thanks, Craig. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. I appreciate you giving your time, and I can see you in the background there. Actually, I think that last conversation that you joined in with obviously resonated with you, and you're getting some smiles there, Eric. Obviously, a very inspiring character.
Absolutely, and I feel a little insignificant now after listening to Chris and Eric's stories. I thank Chris for his service, absolutely, and Eric what he's going through and the things that he's accomplished. That's just an amazing. Both of them have amazing stories. So I think I'll bring a little bit of levity to the conversation now, but it's a little bit different what we do, obviously.
It is, but I called it as navigating life. And these two individuals have actually navigated life, and one came near close to death, obviously paralyzed from the neck down with a gunshot, to his like a spinal injury. But you are putting a scientific approach to question what comes after life.
Absolutely.
And you're interestingly, you're a team of 5 paranormal investigators called the Soul Sisters Paranormal. So I'll throw that up there. I've got a banner here somewhere for you. Let's get it up. There we go. So, and I think I've got your website there. We might actually see if we can throw that up there. Yep. So Soul Sisters Paranormal. So let's get into it. And
absolutely.
I want to know what got you into this paranormal investigating when you've got a PhD in what is it? Something of civil affairs or
public administration with an emphasis on criminal justice. So, my sisters and I have always been fascinated with, the afterlife and what comes next. And we all have an academic background. So as you said, I have a PhD, my twin has a PhD, Michelle and Clara have JDs, and Kim has a master's degree. So, we come at this with a very interesting research-minded perspective, as you said. And my sisters and I live in different parts of the country. And so routinely we would get together and have girls' weekends. And then in 2013, we had a family friend who sat on the board of the Moundsville State Penitentiary, which is in Moundsville, West Virginia, which is one of the most haunted locations in the country. And he said, why don't y'all come up to Moundsville, stay the night in the prison and see what you find? And we jumped at that opportunity. We had a couple of night vision video cameras, a couple of voice recorders, and we left that experience with what we felt was extremely compelling evidence that there was something in that prison with us, something unseen. And we really wanted to delve into that further. So we decided to form Soul Sisters Paranormal, and we came up with our marketing and our logo and our brand, and have just been going around the country ever since looking for evidence of the paranormal, but also highlighting the historical narratives of the historic locations that we go to, such as Fort Mifflin, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, the Villisca Axe Murder House, a lot of those locations that some of our audience may not have the opportunity to go to. We want to bring them that experience.
Yeah, so I have seen your YouTube channel, and I will put that up as well so people can go and have a look. You do go into these places, and I don't know whether I believe it or not. I don't know you could get me to stay overnight in some of these videos that I've seen. So I do want to ask, give some examples. I know they're on your website of some of the places you've visited and some of the questionable things that you've actually experienced while in those houses. Now, and I'll just do a disclaimer. I have heard that there is a question around whether you have a heightened sensitivity when you're in these environments expecting things to actually happen. So you're looking for answers that may not necessarily be there. But obviously there are things that you record that you can say are unexplained. So can you give some examples of what you've seen in some of these places, explain what the places were, not so much all their history, but what are some of the things that really, including the penitentiary, that had you questioning if there is something definitely beyond, I could obviously
Well, absolutely. And, back to your comment about you don't believe whether or not you believe or not. And that's fine. When people approach me and say, well, I don't believe that, that is absolutely fine. I'm not trying to convince anybody of really anything. What we're doing is we're building this case, essentially. We'll go to these locations. We will control for every environmental factor that we can, light, noise, wind pollution, air pollution, anything that we can say, those are environmental. And then absent that, we will put forth the compelling things that we cannot explain. And whether or not you believe it, that's on you. My trying to convince you of this is like trying to convince you that my religion is correct, and I'm not going to do that. But what I'm doing is building this case that says these are the things that I cannot explain in this moment. So, for example, we were at the Exchange Hotel, which is in Gordonsville, Virginia, and this was built as a hotel in pre-Civil War, and then during the Civil War, it was transformed into a hospital for both Union and Confederate soldiers. So over 700 men died in this facility when it was a hospital, and so the reports are that there are children, there are apparitions that can be seen. So we decided to go to this location, and we stayed the night in this former hotel/hospital. And there were 5 female investigators that night. We have no men on the team, and we have certainly no children on the team. So we set up voice recorders in different parts of the facility, and we left them to run during the investigation. And one of the voice recorders during the night captured a male's voice very clearly saying, "I don't know, I'll be back at 4:30. That is something that I cannot explain because I can verify that there were no men in the house, and yet I have this gentleman talking on our voice recorders. A few hours later, another voice recorder captured what was a child's voice saying, "Hi, this is my bed," to a voice recorder that was sitting on a bed. And again, I can't explain that. So those are the compelling things that we find. And like I said, we control for everything that we can. So when we come up with these voices, or we see shadow figures, when I know that nobody is in that room, I can verify that nobody's in the room, yet I see shadows going past our cameras and cutting through our laser grids. Again, those are things that I cannot explain in the moment. So to me, it's extremely compelling that there is something there that to me is unseen, but we're able to see and hear it.
I think, and when I give the disclaimer, I don't know. And I think what I do like about paranormal investigation is that obviously people have experiences that are unexplained, and that what you're trying to do is apply a scientific approach to answer some of those questions. And I do believe, from what I've seen of your YouTube channel, you don't tend to put anything in there, or you do your own disclaimers if you're not 100% sure. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're trying to, again, hoodwink anyone into believing what you believe. It's just reporting what occurred, mm-hmm. and showing the evidence. And if people want to go and check that out, I did put your YouTube channel up there. So they can go check out the YouTube channel, and hopefully that's correct.
Soul Sisters Paranormal, correct. Yep.
Yeah, so they can go and check out the YouTube channel. But I want to talk to the scientific methods that you apply. So you sort of alluded to it a little bit. So you talk about laser grids, and you have audio recorders, you have night vision. Do you want to talk to each of the sort of pieces of equipment? You also have a spirit box, I think, that I've seen in one of your episodes. Are you able to expand on what equipment you're using and what you're trying to use it for?
Absolutely. Well, the first things that I mentioned, again, are voice recorders, because I feel that those are going to give us what I would consider the purest form of paranormal evidence. When I have those voices of a man or a child, and I know that there are no men or children in the area, those are very easy for me to explain and say, okay, I cannot, I don't know where these are coming from. So this is a pure form of paranormal evidence that I feel. After the voice recorders, we do have night vision video cameras, and typically we couple those with a laser grid. So we'll sit one right beside the other. And the idea being that if a shadow figure crosses across a hallway or a doorway, it will cut the laser grids, and we'll capture that on camera. We've been very successful doing that. We captured it at Fort Mifflin, as well as the old Gilchrist Hillcrest County Jail. So we have evidence of that. Again, shadow figures that I cannot explain crossing across hallways and cutting our laser grids in half. So we do use those. We have what you call a spirit box, and that's absolutely correct. It is a small AM/FM radio that's been modified to sweep through frequencies. It doesn't have a very big range. Again, it just fits in the palm of my hand. And when you turn it on and you start what we call the sweep rate, it basically jumps through every frequency. So when you turn it on, it goes as it's sweeping through all of the AM and FM frequencies. And the theory is that spirits can use that white noise to communicate with us. So in theory, you should not hear a phrase come through that spirit box because it's going so quickly through radio stations. So when you do, again, that's extremely compelling. So for example, we were at the Ma Barker house in Central Florida. And we were in the room where Ma and Fred Barker were killed by the FBI in 1935. And so when we set the spirit box up, we were asking questions. And I asked the question, what happened in this room? And through the spirit box came the phrase, they murdered us, we the ones dead. That entire phrase came through. And again, you shouldn't hear that because, again, you're going through hundreds of radio stations very quickly. So when that came through, it was extremely compelling. So we have the spirit box. We have different pieces of handheld equipment that will measure energy in a room or static electricity in a room. So for example, our K2 meters, which were designed by electricians to find electricity in an area, basically, it's just a handheld piece of equipment that has a light array on it that goes from green to red. And if there's no energy in the room, it will remain constant at green. But if there's energy introduced into the environment, it will spike to orange and then ultimately to red if there's that much energy. So to have something like, you go into a prison where you know that there's no energy, there's no power on or electricity on to that location, and you have these spikes in those meters that are designed to measure energy. Again, that's extremely compelling and something that I will use as evidence to say, I can't explain what's going on here. So we'll use those in what we call EVP sessions. So we'll sit down and ask questions in a room, and we'll have these K2 meters sitting there, and we'll ask the spirit to touch it or walk up to it. And a lot of times we've had evidence where it's at green, it's sitting by itself, there's no energy introduced to it, but yet it will start spiking to red when we ask it to. Again, that's extremely compelling to us. So those are the typical things that we use, and we also couple those with what we call trigger items. So for example, if I go into like the St. Augustine Lighthouse, and I know that through our research that one of the lighthouse keepers that is reported to stay there like to smoke a pipe, we'll bring a pipe and see if we can get interaction with that. Or, if we go into a bar, we'll bring a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of beer and see if we can get some responses off what we call those trigger items. So those are the typical things that we'll use during an investigation.
As I said, I watched a few of your videos, and you had 2 axe murder scenarios in your videos, and I found the stories behind those absolutely intriguing. Mm-hmm. And one of those was quite famous. I think it was father and mother that were murdered, and the daughter managed to be found, I believe, not guilty. So do you want to speak to that house and how it's almost kept as it was? In fact, a lot of these haunted places that you have entered do appear to be kept in their original condition, which suggests that maybe they haven't been able to be inhabited for periods of time because people have obviously found that there's something going on there.
Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. So that the one that you were speaking of is the Lizzie Borden house in Fall River, Massachusetts. And that was a case that happened in 1892. And Lizzie Borden was the daughter in this house. And on the morning of the murders, they went into the house and they found her stepmother, Abby, and her father, Andrew, bludgeoned to death, both of them bludgeoned to death with a hatchet. And Abby was struck 18 times in the face, and Andrew was struck 11 times in the face. case. And so they arrested Lizzie Borden again in 1892 for that murder. But during that time, people thought that, a woman wasn't capable of doing something so heinous. So a jury of 12 men found her innocent in 1893. And so she actually, lived the remainder of her life in Fall River, which was interesting that she never left the area. But she was found innocent. She died there in Fall River several years later. But going into that house was extremely interesting to us, because you're right. They kept the hardwood floors, the doors were original, the door handles. So you're walking in and having a very tactile experience with history. You're touching the doorknobs that Lizzie touched. You're walking on the floors that she walked on and going through these rooms. And it is a very interesting experience for us because, like I said, you're connecting with history on that level. So we went in there, and again, there was 5 female investigators that night, and we actually stayed the night there. We went in about 4:00 in the afternoon on a Friday and stayed until about 10:30 in the morning on the Saturday. So we stayed the entire night. We slept there and came away with some very compelling evidence. Again, there was no men with us, but yet we were capturing male voices. We captured the sounds of children laughing. When we were all down on the first floor, we captured footsteps running across the 3rd story when we weren't up there. So very compelling things like that was what we captured. But we have had the opportunity to go to that location, to Villisca, to the Villisca Axe Murder House, which is out in Iowa. And again, same story. It's one of these old farmhouses that has really withstood the test of time. You go in again, you have the same floors, the same doors, the same windows, and you walk up and you really have that sense of connecting with history on that level. And then, once we really put that forward in our videos, then we couple that with the compelling evidence that we have found during the night of our investigation. So again, the history is so important to us. And even if we were to go into a location and not find anything, what we considered compelling paranormal evidence, we would still put forth a video, because we feel the history and the narrative around that history is so important to the preservation of those historic places.
So it's absolutely intriguing that you have pursued this as, I will say, a passion, because it's not every day that you do stumble across people who actually have had experiences, whether they like spiritual or unexplained, but to find someone who's turned it into a passion with her sisters or siblings and friends, it's quite intriguing. And you're creating, I put the YouTube channel up there. It's a little bit hard to sort of see. I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit, but I can see your latest episode there, Sleepy Hollow, Landmark Legends and Lore. So that's only just gone up in the last couple of days, I can see. So what are some of the scariest moments you've experienced in this, where you question whether you're actually knocking on the door of something that you shouldn't?
I'd say, first of all, I'm actually more scared of humans than I am of ghosts at this point in my life. But we were at the old Gilchrist County Jail, which is in Trenton, Florida. It's about an hour's west of Gainesville, Florida, if anybody knows where that is. And on the first night we investigated, we've been there several times. The first night that we investigated, it was actually just myself and a friend of mine, Miranda from Ghost Biker Explorations. She and I had collaborated on this investigation. So she and I were the only 2 people in that building. And this is a small jail. It was built in 1928, and it ran as a jail till 1968, and then it was abandoned for decades, and it actually became a hotbed for drug activity. So people would go in there into this abandoned location and make drug deals, and then so all those seedy things that went on there, and so there was actually a couple of drug dealers that were killed there, verified drug dealers that were killed in the year 2001 and 2001. So we had those verified deaths in that location. So we went into this location, and both she and I are licensed to carry handguns. So we had our handguns on us when we went into this jail for the night. And again, just for things that may happen in the real world. And we weren't really feeling anything to begin with. We really weren't picking up on anything. Our equipment really wasn't picking up on anything. And so Miranda said, what if they think we're law enforcement? So to prove we weren't law enforcement, we said, we're going to take our guns off and just put it on this cot here, so you can see that we're not law enforcement. So I took my gun off and I put it on the cot, And Miranda, as she was taking her gun off, she was putting it down and she said, "I'm putting this down nice and easy." And right behind us, a guy says, "Good." And there's nobody else in the building with us, but we hear this voice right behind us saying "good." And after that, the night really was on with regard to compelling evidence. We were capturing other EVPs telling us to get out. We were seeing shadow figures. We were capturing shadow figures. All of our handheld equipment that night was giving some indication that there was energy levels that we couldn't explain because there's no power to the building. So it was a very compelling night with regard to evidence. And so I'd say that was probably the most active location that we've been to. Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Tennessee would be probably the second most active.
Have any of the 5 Soul Sisters question whether they want to be still a team of 5? Has anyone sort of said, I don't know that I want to do this? Or are you guys really that fascinated by the whole process that and you're all there, and like you say, you're more scared of real people than ghosts?
We've had moments where we've had subset of the team, not because of being scared or frightened, but because just travel restrictions and all of that. So there's been times where it's just been my twin and I, or I'll collaborate with somebody else, or we'll have 3 of us. So we have various on investigation. We have various numbers during each investigation, but for the most part, we're all in. All 5 of us just absolutely love doing this. It's something that, again, just being able to walk into these locations, not many people can say that they've stayed the night in the St. Augustine Lighthouse or Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary or the Lizzie Borden House, but we can say that we've done that. So just to be in these places for the historical aspect of it, that is the most compelling part. And then to be able to couple that with things that we can't explain, we're all fascinated and we're all in.
So I don't think my house is haunted, but I do have a story for you that you might say, well, maybe there is something to this. So I do recording, obviously, here and in this room. And I actually, a few weeks back, did a recording where I asked a question, is it a bike? Because I couldn't remember the word. And I distinctly hear a voice say, yes, it's a bike, to which I responded, yes, it's a bike. But I thought I might have sub-verbally said it. And I listened to it over and over and over and again, but I couldn't place the other. It didn't sound like me, but it's there. So... So it got me when I saw you recording voices. I've never seen anything that goes bump in the night in this premises, but I certainly was questioning when I listened to that, when I listened back, because I was listening through headphones. And I asked the question. It was quite intriguing. So when I saw what you actually do, I was thinking, wow, there might be something more in that. I thought I was actually going crazy, which sounds crazy. And people, it's up on Facebook. They can go and have a listen to it, see for themselves, but it is there. And I listened. It was enough for me to listen and go, is someone actually answering that question that I just asked myself out loud in the audio? Because I actually asked the question, then I hear an answer, but then I say, I actually verbalize, yes, it is, but I heard something else or someone else. I don't believe it was me, but it might have been under my breath. That's the problem. I don't know. It's a different experience to you, but it certainly had me stopping and listening to the audio.
And that's absolutely right. And when people say, I think my house is haunted or I think my business is haunted, the very first thing I'll do is I'll hand them a couple voice recorders or tell them to go purchase voice recorders, from Amazon and just say, just turn it on and record during your day and just set it up and just record, ask questions, talk and be verbal in your house like you normally do, and then go back and listen. I always say a lot of people hear, but not a lot of people listen. And you've got to go back and you've got to do, and when we can complete our investigations, I have 10 voice recorders. I have 20 night vision video cameras. And after each investigation, we sit and we listen to every piece of audio that we captured and watch every piece of footage that we captured, just for that very reason, to see if we captured something that we can't explain or didn't hear in the moment. So that is absolutely, that's a very compelling story. And you may actually have somebody that's, sitting on your shoulder answering your questions for you.
Yeah. So you're looking at the scientific side of this. And when you're dealing with these experiences, I call them experiences because even though you're looking to see if there is something there, it is really a phenomenon. So you're not even necessarily, you're using the word paranormal, which basically means it's like beyond the normal, what we experience.
Correct.
You're not even trying to pretend that they're ghosts or anything like that. Really, you're just saying there is unusual activity that can't be explained. Is that correct?
That is correct, but I do feel that the things that we're going in and trying to communicate with did have a human experience at some point. And in my mind, the human experience is we all want to be noticed. Nobody wants to go through life being invisible, and I think that's the same experience with those that we're trying to communicate with. They want to be noticed. They want to have their story told. Back to the Ma Barker example, when I asked that question to the spirit box, what happened in this room? The answer was they murdered us, we the ones dead. I think that's their story. Yes, they were killed by the FBI, but in their mind, they were murdered, and they wanted that story told. And that's what I want to do with these narratives. But back to that question, we are trying to approach this again with that scientific mindset. And there's been places where we'll go in and we find things that are environmental. I've had to tell homeowners and business owners, I totally believe that you're experiencing these things, but I also believe it's caused by these lights. It's caused by your neighbors doing this, or this wind. You have this window cracked and you just didn't know it, and this wind is coming through. So we can try to find those environmental factors first before we put out anything that we can't explain. And so that's really how we do approach those investigations.
So there are different types of hauntings. Like there's like poltergeists, there's ghosts or apparitions, there's all these different things. So do you want to describe some of those? Obviously voices and footsteps and knocking, knocking tends to be associated with poltergeists and things. Do you want to explain the difference of what they are? And do you have a theory? So let's say it is spiritual and there's spirits or ghosts or energies that are left behind that haven't found their way to a beyond. What I'm trying to be as objective as I can.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
I don't know what I don't know, and I don't pretend to believe I know anything. So I'm trying to put the question without putting any sort of religious bias or anything on it. But let's say that it's spiritual, and there is a spirit, and we have spirits. Do you want to talk to what some of these potential entities then may be, if they actually indeed are entities? That's pretty objective to say like that, I think.
Okay. So I'm going to answer that question in two ways. The first one, I will say I'm Christian. I do believe in God. I do believe that there's something after this, and because of my religious beliefs, I'll call it heaven. So I do believe that when we die, most of us will ascend to that next level, to that next realm. And so, but for me, I do believe that there are reasons why you would stay, that some spirits remain earthbound. I think there's three reasons. The first one is that they do have unfinished business. I know you hear that a lot in popular television shows and media, but I do believe that there are some entities that have unfinished business. So for example of that, my granddaddy died in 1986, and I was extremely close to my grandmother, who we called Nana. And in 2014, I had a very vivid dream that my granddaddy came to me in this dream, and he looked at me and he said, I'm waiting for your Nana. You're going to be getting a call soon. And about 2 weeks later, she was in an accident, and she never really recovered from that. She went into hospice for about 4 weeks. And on the day she died, and with permission from my family, I looked at my twin sister and I said, I know where she's going. She's going to go meet granddaddy in this location, in this house that they were living in. And I said, that's where they're going to go. That's where she's going to go, and she's going to meet up with him. And so we went to that house. The power had been turned off because she was in hospice for so long. So we went to that house and we started asking questions with our K2 meters. And I said things like, Nana, are you here? If you're here, can you light up my meter for me? Can you light this up? And through a series of questions for about 30 minutes, we were having back and forth yes and no questions sessions with those K2 meters. So I was able to, what I believe, verify that Nana and Granddaddy met up and they were ascending together. We went back a week later and asked the same questions into the exact same experiment, and we got nothing, no blip on any of our meters. So again, that was extremely compelling to me, and it was also very peaceful to me. But I feel that that was Granddaddy's unfinished business, and now he's moved on with Nana. And so I'm not going to I won't be in contact with them anymore because I feel they've ascended. So that's number one. Number two is I think that they're stuck. For some reason, they know they're dead, but they can't ascend to whatever's next. We were at the Hales Bar Dam in Tennessee. And this dam was built in the early 1930s. And there's a series of tunnels that run underneath the dam. And school kids would use those tunnels to get from one side to the other to get to school. And during I think the 1960s, there was an accident and 2 kids were killed. So when we were investigating the dam a couple of years ago, we asked the question, why are you here? Why haven't you moved on? And we captured a child's voice saying, I can't, I'm stuck. So in that instance, I believe he's stuck. He knows he's dead, but he can't, whatever mechanism, if you will, allows him to ascend, he can't find it. So he's stuck. And then the third one is, I believe that there's fear or retribution as to what's coming next in the afterlife because of the life they lived here on earth. And I think we find that in prisons, in insane asylums, those type of entities, those type of spirits are very happy to remain where they're at because they don't want to ascend to whatever's next for fear of retribution. So those are the entities that I feel we speak to in those instances. So those are the 3 reasons.
My previous guest has asked you a question. Have you reached out to any like TV channels or like the History Channel or anyone like that to actually take up your show?
Eric, thank you so much for that question, and I'm honored that you're watching this segment. But we actually had two different producers contact us. We actually signed with one, but they wanted us to kind of change our format. We're not the type of females that really go in and scream and run out and all of that. So they wanted us to really kind of sensationalize what we do a little bit for a media audience, and so we declined and decided that's not where we wanted to go. And then we had another production company contact us, but they wanted us to bring in male guests, which is fine. We will bring in males in certain instances or those that want to investigate with us, but they wanted that person to be a presence on the team. And so again, we're not going to change our format or our style. And they also wanted us to kind of give up our branding where they would be in control of it. And I decided that that's not what we're going to do. So for us, we're very particular about our brand. And so we actually respectfully declined to sign with them. But, you know, for us, if a television show happens, that's fantastic, but that's really not our driving factor behind what we do. We're very content to build our audience base and those that legitimately want to watch us for what we're finding in our historical narrative that we put forward. You know, I have a lot of people ask us why I haven't monetized our YouTube channel. And for me, it kind of feels a little bit disingenuous in my mind to say, pay me to watch what I'm doing. And because I think it could lead to the fact of people saying, well, you're inventing this evidence because you want people to watch so you can get money. And I feel that would kind of do a disservice to our team. So that's the reason we have not monetized our YouTube channel, because I want people to know that we're not doing this for money. We're doing this because we actually have the enjoyment of going to these locations and putting stuff out there that we find fascinating and compelling.
I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and feel free to comment. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be advised of new interviews when they're uploaded. I hope you join us again sometime. Catch you later.